A very short presentation. Okay, so this really is about us learning from each other as much as possible. So thanks for coming up front, and also come on up as forward as you can. You guys will be talking to each other to some degree as well. So go ahead and anytime you want to go. And by the way, this is a microphone pillow or something like that. You can kind of throw this around. Here, let me go ahead and toss this to you. They're going to be streaming this presentation, and you can toss it around, and so that the other people in the rest of the streaming can hear us. We want to toss that back and forth, and you can just speak to that big black box on the button on the top is the microphone. Yeah. So I had to ask them earlier about how stable that thing is. Can we actually dribble that like a basketball? And maybe not that, but you can certainly toss it across a 200-seat room. So pretty neat. Again, hi, come on in, come on up front if you can. Come on up as much as you can. Be part of the cool kids. Thank you for coming. This is collaborative decision making in higher education learning management systems. And so, like I said, I probably got 10 slides of information. But those slides are here to encourage us to collaborate in this room and to discuss and to share. So if you're not in a frame of mind, if you want to just be passive, sure, you can hang out in the back. Or if you're not feeling collaborative, you might want to hit the door. I don't know. Anyway, so my name is Michael Wilder. I'm the Assistant Director of Academic Technology and User Services for the Teaching and Learning and Technology Division. And that's a lot of words to just basically say I'm one of the guys in the centralized IT area. In my area, one of the offices manages the learning management system, and so frequently we get a lot of questions about how we configure that learning management system, or there are different kind of political issues related to the learning management system. So, so that's why I'm here today, is to kind of share with you some of my experiences and some of the solutions that we've come up with as far as managing higher educational learning management system. So, let me tell you about my objectives, and this is just basically right out of the description, and that is to identify some of the important issues related to learning management systems. What are some of the key questions that people might come to you about, and some of the things you might want to consider if you haven't already considered them, or if you're a consultant, you want to talk to people and ask them about, what have they considered these things. List some of the key stakeholders so that you could possibly invite them to the table and talk about some of those, and discuss strategies for forming a collaborative model. So all of these questions and all of these items I'm encouraging you to participate in and to share with each other and share with me. I want to learn from you as much as you learn from me today. So a little bit about Western Washington, and this is probably maybe similar to your institution, it may be very different from your institution, but we're a pretty small institution, about 15,000 students, 4-year institution. Okay, very few higher education, and a lot of students, they come to Western for their undergrad, and then they go off to somewhere else like University of Washington, right, if they want to go on to grad school. It's also very much a residential institution. Students come to campus, and they either stay on campus as freshmen, 92% it says, or they stay somewhere in town. Okay, so we don't have a lot of distance education per se right now. It's not a huge demand for it, and the faculty are very proud and very content with their sense of hands-on with students in a face-to-face environment. So it's very early in their development of the use of a learning management system. And I've just come to this institution in the last year and a half from another institution, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where they had a huge online education presence. And so it's kind of interesting for me to come to this new institution right at a time when they're just beginning their evolution in terms of a learning management system and how to manage an online education program. I've been told that even as recently as a couple years ago, the word online education was kind of forbidden, that in fact you talked about maybe blended. You could talk about blended, you could talk about hybrid, but you didn't want to talk about online education. So it's kind of an interesting position to be in right now, just really starting up this online education thing and talking about some of the deeper issues related to management of a learning management system. We are a Canvas institution. How many people are also using Canvas? Great. What else are you using? What else do you have? Brightspace. I heard Moodle. What else? Sakai. Blackboard. Yes. Okay, so quite a variety. I would say that this presentation is not tailor-made towards Canvas. Very vendor neutral. And in fact, I would even go so far as to say that this is not necessarily related to a learning management system. Yes, I'm going to approach it from a learning management system perspective, but I think that you could take some of these thoughts and ideas and apply them to just about any kind of institutional program, any kind of institutional software evaluation or management as well. So while I'm approaching it from a LMS perspective, think about it. How could you apply this to other instances? Okay, how could you think about it these ways? Okay, some introductions. I've explained a little bit about who I am, and so tell me a little bit about you. I walk down the hallway and I see a lot of classroom services, audiovisual type hardware, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, everyone's here going to be, you know, they're face-to-face classroom type people, tech people. Where are you from? How many are here are really from kind of a classroom AV kind of background? Good, good, good. Yes, quite a few. How many are here for that are part of an online education kind of initiative? Good. A couple of you, sort of, kind of like. Where else in terms of others? What other categories could we say? Yes, sir.
Faculty training, consulting, supporting.
Yes, absolutely. Very cool.
So I'm in a group called Academic Technology and Outreach, which is a new organization to make the blend all of the above, right? So think about how we synthesize the three things that have been mentioned so far.
Yes, yes, very cool. Well, this presentation is kind of an oddball, right? The whole notion that we talk about collaboration. And I thank you very much for coming today. As opposed to coming and learning about some kind of technology, this really is talking about human beings getting together. And I think that's probably the hardest part of everybody's job in an IT environment. How do we get people together? How do we get them in the room? How do we get them to talk about the important issues? Those kind of things. So would somebody like to volunteer to tell me, why did you come here? What was it that you came here to learn? Yes, sir.
What kind of collaboration is possible and between which kinds of parties?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
In other words, are the parties the administration who buys the LMS, plus faculty, plus IT, or only a couple of those, or?
Great question. Yeah. Go ahead.
Right. Which you talked about stakeholders. Who are they?
Yes.
And then how do they collaborate? That's what I wanted to.
That's a great question. Yeah. So we'll definitely touch on who are the primary people that you might want to invite to these tables. I don't have the exact answer. I do have some advice about how we've looked at it, and you might do the same, but take a look at your institution and say, oh, I need to include these other people too. Okay, so we'll go through that part. What else? How else have you, here, go ahead and tell us about it. Thank you, sir. What else did you come to learn? What did you come here? What was it about this description of this presentation that you thought, I need to check this out? Yes, sir. Lawrence.
Thanks. So our department interfaces with many other departments that handle parts of like the face-to-face technology at OHSU. And so twofold. One, how do we improve our relationships with other departments within the university? But then, you know, piggybacking on the gentleman's previous comments, you know, who are the stakeholders and how do we best reach out to them and make sure that they're heard? But then also, I mean, we can't please everybody. So how do we do the best we can with the resources that we have available? And we're very resource constrained at the moment. So, you know, balancing all of that, yeah. and hearing what other folks have, their situations and how they've kind of dealt with these sorts of issues.
Right, right. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? Yes, sir. Oh.
Good throw. So yeah, kind of same idea. I'm not really involved that much with we use Canvas at Highline College as well, and not really involved with that much, but I figured, at least the principles, maybe learning from the principles that you've learned from or whatever in terms of pulling people together and making decisions that, in regards to technology that people can be, satisfied with.
Great, great. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Is that I kind of feel like the only constant in my career in higher ed IT has been constant change all the time. So something that we kind of hear is like, well, not only did you make this change without consulting us, we didn't even know about it. So how do we get more people invested and involved and helping us to make the right decisions for the whole campus community? Even though you can't always please everyone, as someone said, but how do we maximize that potential?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so huge. Has anybody? I mean, I see a few hands, few heads like nodding with that one. You ever had that experience where you implement something you think is great, and then everybody says, "Well, I wasn't involved in that decision, and so I hate it." You guys ever get that? Yeah, you get that all the time. And at UNLV, we went through a transition from one LMS to the other. There was really no choice in the matter. I mean, we had no alternative. And of course, faculty hated it. And would they have chosen the same LMS? Most likely. I mean, there weren't really many options. But they weren't involved in that decision. And so therefore, they absolutely hated it, dug in their heels. And it's very difficult to overcome that, especially in IT. If you expect, you think you're doing the right thing, but you don't involve the people to come to your way of thinking, or at least trying to encourage them to participate, they're certainly not going to buy in, right? Hear that all the time. So I'm kind of curious, how are decisions currently made at your institution regarding configurations for learning management systems, anything? How are decisions made? Are they made at the administrator level? Somebody just goes ahead and does it. At the IT level, some IT administrator makes that decision, or is it something that really seems to be collaborative? Yes, sir.
As I mentioned, I don't work, much with, the decisions with it, but I do see a lot. Our instructional design director does a lot to, he sends out emails to communicate, hey, we're considering a new, or the next phase of the LMS system, and tries to pull in as many faculty, and so by the time the decision's made, you do kind of feel like it was a campus decision, not just here's your LMS system, have fun.
A lot of communication, in other words. Yes, definitely. I would encourage that as much as possible.
So we have an LMS governance council
Wow.
that's made up of mostly faculty, but we have people on our university relations communications group that's over look and feel. Anytime we want to change the interface,
Wow.
they got to look at it and say, you need to adjust that font or those colors or those types of things. IT group, the academic technology group, our online learning group. So there are several stakeholders there. They look at integrations. If somebody wants to integrate a third-party tool, they can apply to do that. But then this governance council will actually approve and recommend.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic. That's great. What institution are you with?
BYU Idaho.
Okay, fantastic, BYU. Yeah, no, I kind of did a poll of just the people that I know at different institutions in the Pacific Northwest to ask them a little bit more about who has some kind of governance committee. And by far, the smaller institutions did not have any. Seemed like the large institutions, they had some kind of group. So kind of my hidden agenda here is to encourage everybody to think about who are the stakeholders and try to implement at least some sort of shared decision making as far as something that's as powerful as a learning management system. Okay, I kind of already asked about governing body. How many have some sort of governing body for an LMS? 2, 3, maybe. Okay, so you can kind of see just how much there's actually there. Anybody have any kind of interesting stories about decisions that needed to be made, weird or otherwise, in terms of how anybody come to you and say, hey, I would like to make this change to the LMS? Anybody have anything like that? And you go, I don't know how I'm going to answer that question. Yes, sir. Lawrence? Passing that over.
For OHSU, it's kind of who's asking the question and what is the question. When we were implementing Echo 360 for classroom capture and for personal lecture capture, our team had to work with the Education Communications Department, and that didn't require a lot of oversight from, say, like the Provost Office, for example. However, if we wanted to change like certain fonts or colors, that's the marketing team, and they very much have a strong say as to what goes online and what doesn't. So for us, it can be as granular as changing the font to, or how we use the font, or something broader that affects how classes are taught in person and or fully online. And that's hard sometimes because we often find out after the fact that, oh, we didn't include some X person or the department, and then they hate it, like you said earlier, and then we're in the doghouse.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a case story of something that happened to us that kind of prompted us to start thinking about some kind of governing body. What originally happened was that the bookstore started to contact us, and the bookstore was saying that there are publishers who are asking to have an LTI, as kind of an add-on to the learning management system. They're asking the book publishers to add an LTI to the learning management system, to extend it. And what in particular they wanted to do was to be able to charge students for their books directly inside of the LMS. And the publishers did a great job of selling online education and about digital textbooks to the bookstore. And of course the bookstore got behind it and they said, great, and who do I talk to in Canvas administration to implement these LTIs? And so these started to come to us, these requests. And at first, we were just kind of saying, the question wasn't, can we put the LTI in there? They're saying, who do we need to talk to just go ahead and implement this? And we said, well, at first we said, okay, sure, you're the bookstore, you know what you want, and we started to implement these LTIs in Canvas. And then we started to get more and more of these, and people started to come to us with things like inclusive access. Anybody hear about inclusive access? You may hear about this term inclusive access. That's essentially the publishers all get together in one big pool, and they come in, and the students can then get their textbooks and their materials for a lot of different people directly through the LMS. So we started to think about that. It's like, is that something we want to do? I mean, that's the first question, is this a good idea? And are we equipped to make the determination as to whether this is a good idea? So that's really where this all came from. So we originally just went ahead and did it. But then we started to kind of look at that and say, is that a good idea? So LTIs is learning, technology, interoperability. Thank you. So it's essentially a standard, some sort of standard. They write these programs that go into your Canvas learning management system, and there's all kinds of them. If you ever go to this administrative page, there's all kinds of really cool ones. There's some that are really benign and very neat, and others that will add some really major changes to your learning management system. And we had been installing them just based upon somebody that seemed reputable on campus without really talking about it too much. And then we started to say, well, is this really a good idea? Maybe we should take this up to some kind of committee. And so I started to ask about that, and well, there wasn't really any committee. It was really just being done. Just if you knew who was the Canvas administrator, you sent an email to the Canvas administrator, and the Canvas administrator did it, right? So we started to look at some of the details of these LTIs, and that, in fact, the LTI, or this extension, this plugin, had the capability of retrieving data out of Canvas. right? So it's not just adding functionality, but it's also pulling data out, right? They've got to be able to charge the student. If they want to offer the students to buy textbooks through the LMS, well, then they need to know who the student is. They might need to know their student ID number. They might need to know a lot more information than that. And so we started looking at well, yeah, sure enough, in the configuration, if it's set to public, basically we're saying, yeah, they could pull out whatever data they want. And we start to look at some of the data sets that are being pulled out of there. So where is this data going? Where's this data going? How is it being used? So there was a lot more detail that was involved in this. And started to look around and find out, here's an example from the University of Washington. So they had an LTI contract, right? That's pretty neat, okay? So if somebody says to you, I would like an LTI put into learning management system, well, then they better be sure that it is secure, that they're not taking this data and sharing it with somebody else. You guys all know about this whole Facebook thing, Cambridge Analytica. Are we passing our data from our LMS out to Cambridge Analytica or something like that, right? Right out just like they did with Facebook. Where is this information going? Who's using it? What's it being used for? Is it being deleted? Is it being shared? All of those kind of things. We didn't have a clue. And we weren't really looking into this as deeply as we should have. So we started to look into other ways, into other institutions. They had nice contracts. And we had, they started to look at, they've got a data security and privacy agreement at University of Washington. So it goes even deeper from just an LTI, just to the overall institutional direction as far as how data is handled. Okay, so this is just one case of to me, was kind of a scary eye-opener that our LMS was potentially leaking data, and that there needed to be some kind of deep-level contract in place before we started to enable and open those doors to other people. So that's just one example of kind of an issue that you might be concerned about in terms of your LMS, and what you might want to look at. So what might be some other issues here? I'm going to actually open this up at this point and suggest I turn this over to you and ask you to tell me what might be other issues you would ask an LMS committee. Questions like I just talked about, Canvas security and data security and privacy. What else?
Accessibility.
Accessibility is certainly a huge one right now, right? Accessibility, ability. What else? What other kind of issues would you consider you think you might want to talk to a group of people about? Yes, sir.
Well, which LMS to use if you need to change it? Or
Right. Which LMS? Which? What else? I heard. Yes, sir.
Upgrades. So if there's major updates and upgrades, how do you get that information out? Is it something you need to give to everybody or just the backend people? And who does it affect?
Right. And not only that, when? You know, when are you going to do that upgrade? Are you going to do that during finals week? You know, are you going to do that in the middle of summer? When are you going to do those upgrades? What other kind of issues? Yes, sir.
vendor support.
Vendor support. Great. Other issues? There are so many out there. And once we start digging at these, and I would say, again, this doesn't just apply to an LMS. When you are going to implement some kind of new institutional system or program, you probably ought to really start thinking about what could be the issues we want to ask everybody. Yes, sir? Uptime maintenance windows. Oh, and, yeah. Are there anybody here that's an administrator, an LMS administrator, server administrator? Yes, sir. So, do you ever get any questions about changing the LMS?
Occasionally, a lot of times that'll have to do with someone who just maybe has a question or they run into something where they need an explanation, and it turns out that the way that the LMS is handling it doesn't align with what they would expect or what they would think is straightforward, and they'll
Interesting. Can you basically change the interface to do what, what they might want?
So if I hide something in the grade book, that hides the total grade for the students. By default, we change that.
Interesting, yeah. I also heard fonts out there, so I can add that on there. Just fonts and colors. I hadn't thought about that one either. Yes, sir.
Support services.
Yes. How so? Can you describe?
What are we doing to support our faculty and students around the LMS?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like professional development? Yep, yep. Anything else? Here's my list. Some of the things that I've had recently come to my desk. There's a whole lot of different ones. When does your quarter or your semester start? When do students have access to the start of the course, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Certainly the registrar is probably the office that says, this is the start of the quarter, and here's the end of the quarter. But you also have how much time do they get before the quarter starts for students to get access, and how much time is the class accessible after the quarter's over, right? So how many have theirs? Anybody have an LMS that starts on the same day as the class start? Yours?
Yeah, so classes start, or the online component opens the day the term begins.
Yes.
Classes start.
Yeah.
It remains open only for a finite amount of time due to rules we have with publishers. Because we have content available, we can't leave it open indefinitely.
Yes.
We have to close the courses. So we tell students, like, if you want to save something, like save when the course is open. Otherwise, your access will be cut off at a certain point.
Right. So they've shown that if students have access a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, that gives them time to come in at least to see the syllabus and see what is the textbook. If you might wait, you might be tempted to wait for the first day of class. Well, then that means that's when they get a chance to see what textbook it is, and now we've got them set back a week before they actually get the textbook. Right? And so they may have lost the first week of class of any instruction because they didn't get the textbook or they didn't know what the learning objectives were or how the classes run, things like that. So giving previous access may be a good idea. And then leaving it at least open for past finals, right? So that, and in some classes that you might even want the content to be persistent, so that this class builds on the next class, and so therefore I'll keep this course open for an entire year. So those kind of questions come up. Now, how long is the class? Is it a quarter? Is it a semester? Is it a year-long class because it's an advising kind of non-credit class? So we do have a lot of these non-graded courses. What are the policies about non-graded courses? Okay, who gets access? Who can actually get into them? Who can request them? How do they request them? These are all very important kind of issues to consider. We recently had an instructor who is teaching an advisory course, and he wanted us to turn off the ability for students to communicate with each other within the course. What do you think about that? What do you think if we just turned off the ability for students to communicate with each other? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Yes, ma'am.
We have that for merged courses where they're not.
Yes, please.
I think this topic, because we use Canvas, but I think this topic came out in the Canvas community about merged courses where technically if students are not, and this is like FERPA, which I'm not the FERPA enforcer, but if they're not technically registered in the same course, but the instructor wants to merge it for their, ease, technically the students should not know the other identities of the students that they're not registered for. So we have to turn off those discussions and collaborations and anything that would prevent them from.
Even if it's the same course?
No, so yeah, so it could be the Business 101, but there's 2 sections. They're completely taught at different times. Technically, the students do not meet. Yeah, and then the instructors have to kind of agree to these terms. It's pretty conservative. Yeah.
So we had the same instructor in this course. Again, the course itself was an advisory course. He was just trying to have this non-graded course available for students to get to the paperwork and the forms so that students could complete their degree. Turned out that there were students behind the scenes talking to each other about how they could not take that person's course. And don't take that guy's course, it's a crummy course. And so he found that he was using this non-graded course, and people were trying to tell everyone else, don't take his class. So he wanted all communication cut off in the course. It's a little tricky, okay? What about course access? Usually the registrar would assign an instructor and students to the courses, right, through the student information system, banner, or something like that. But what if another instructor is going to co-teach? Or what happens, this has recently happened, where we had one instructor assigned to a course in the summertime, and then that instructor was taken out and a new instructor was put in, but the old instructor didn't, okay, the old instructor did not get taken out of the course to begin with. And that old one started deleting content, right? Okay, there's a problem. Who's got access to the course? How many faculty have access to the course? What about TAs? What kind of roles and permission settings do we have to give them? So those kind of questions come up. Who's going to get access? What kind of access do they have? How about course archiving? Okay, we don't have an infinite amount of storage space for our courses. At a certain point, we've got to say, okay, that's it. So we're going to have to say that maybe the courses are archived, are available for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but then after that, they have to get archived or they get thrown away, right? So how many have, well, what kind of course archiving procedures do you have at your institution? Anybody know? Anybody have any idea? So that's a good question to consider. How long does it take before you start throwing away courses? If it's 10 years old, it's probably time to archive it, move it out, and put it somewhere else. Again, file quotas and media recommendations. Do you embed heavy media in your courses? Do you put multimedia videos, large videos inside your courses, and then that goes against your overall quota of your storage system? Could be a problem. Okay, so who's going to set those policies? You want IT to do it? Should we do that and then tell you how it's done? No, 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 no. Okay, making some of these decisions can be tricky. So communication settings, like I said, who can email whom? Grades in the SIS integration. Recently, the course evaluations just came up. It was like, okay, now we've got this new course evaluation system. Do you want IT to get involved in these decisions about how course evaluations are made? Don't do that. Okay, get people at the table you can talk to. Course standards. Do you want us to tell you what are the standards for your course? No, 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 no. So these are just some of the issues to really consider. Accessibility concerns, video captioning, FERPA, privacy. So I'm going to beat this horse to death here. So who would be some of the stakeholders here? Who do you think should be at the table in terms of making some of these decisions? Yes, sir. Faculty. Absolutely. Right? And not just faculty. Who's generally a governing body of faculty? You get the faculty senate in there. Okay, so some representative of faculty senate I would suggest would be a good idea. Who else? Certainly, the IT team meets, IT ID, yes, your instructional designers should be in there. And since I already said it, I'm going to say IT the server administrators. Let's put it that way. The LMS administrators should be in there. Because not everybody knows what the options are. You're going to need the people that know the options, can actually pull up those settings and say, hey, this is a question. What should we put this at? What else?
College and departmental technology support.
Yes, yes. So you got at the college level support. Good addition. What else? Who else?
Academic leadership.
Yes. Like whom? Who are you thinking?
I mean, something along the lines of, in the reporting line of the provost, so essentially the provost.
Right, right. Yes, sir.
Have a
I'm so glad you brought that up, all right? And I don't know if you have a student technology fund and the students pay some part of their, you know, their fund, their money to every quarter to paying for their student technology. In some places, that money might go to the LMS. They certainly pay tuition. They're the ones paying the tuition, and they are the ones thereby paying some of the fees for the LMS as well, right? This isn't just coming from the state. It's not coming from taxes necessarily. It's coming from the students. Yeah, they should be at the table. I might even go so far as to call it, you know, the student. Who would actually be the ones to be there? Would you open it up to just any student? But I would say your associated students, associated student body, some organization from the, you know, some representative. What else? Whom else? Whom else? Anybody else? I'm sorry? Legal. Some kind of legal. I think that's a good one. Okay. So here are some considerations that we've come up with. Certainly associated students, again, they should have some representation. This is their machine, right? This is their hardware. Definitely faculty senate. Those two right there are probably the two stakeholders should be there. I might add that we include the LMS administrators just because they know what the choices are. But at the end of the day, these two groups are the ones that need to make a lot of decisions. Certainly, as you said, some sort of academic leadership like the provost, the vice provost of academic affairs, or somebody at that high level. There could be somebody from a union, right, from the faculty union or some kind of union as well, because sometimes these touch on union-type decisions. The registrar, absolutely. And in many institutions, the registrar is sort of the guardian of FERPA. Is that the same at your institution? So the registrar is not just the person who decides what gets taught and when, but they also are pretty much the guardians of data security, or at least in terms of FERPA security. So you will have to make a lot of decisions about how the LMS is managed that are related to them as well. If you have an online education office, your instructional designers, any of those kind of people, extended education, yeah, why not? They're the ones that are kind of building these courses. We didn't mention Disability Resource Office. Does everybody have some sort of DRS, some sort of Disability Resource Center or something like that? Yeah, right now there's all kinds of lawsuits going on in regards to accessibility. You've got video captioning, you've got just so much that's related to accessibility. You're going to definitely consider inviting somebody that's in that office. The library system. You might not have thought about that. And in many cases, the libraries actually have access to the LMS. They get into it, and so that they provide resources to your instructors, either from reserves, book reserves, or other kind of resources. So I would involve the library, certainly the bookstore. Consider the bookstore if they really do want to get involved in this. At some point, your chief security officer or somebody that's there involved in data security and privacy, your campus web development office. Those guys right now at our institution, the web developers are the ones that are having to face accessibility and totally changing all our institutional websites. Okay, so how would you go about forming this type of group? What would you do? What might be your procedures in terms of getting these kind of people together? Yes, sir.
Well, kind of, I think a starting point question maybe is frequency.
Yes.
So if you step back to that last slide, that's a lot of FTE.
Yes.
So how often can you pull all that together and balance the schedules? And if that's a question.
Yes. You're absolutely right. You may want to consider how often is this group going to be getting together. There could be some pretty high-level people there with some pretty high-level salaries. Do you want to do it every week? Probably not. Okay, so how often would you have these people get together?
And I'm really curious, if you let's say you had 8, 9, 10 people invited to this meeting, what's the quorum? Not in specific numbers, but like, okay, which of these focus or interest groups need to be there for this to go forward, or else it doesn't really mean anything. For if it's just a bunch of IT people, then it's a bunch of IT people making the decision like you were talking about before.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the protocol. You need to determine what the protocol is. And I wouldn't say you come to this meeting and say, here's what our protocol is. You get people together in a room and you say, what should be our protocol? Are we talking about Robert's Rules of Order? Are we talking about a simple majority? How do you want to manage this? So protocols. What kind of protocol would you use? Protocol. What else? Let me get one more. Anything else? No? Yes, sir.
Who's the authority? So not just what's the quorum, but who makes the final decisions here, and who are we recommending to?
Let's put that down as authority, because you just opened up a pretty thick can of worms here. Are we talking about a body that can make a decision and it sticks, right? Or is it a recommending committee? That one I don't know the answer to. I'll tell you how we did it. We said that these are making recommendations to the Faculty Senate. And the Faculty Senate can advise the central IT. Okay, but is this a group that makes a decision or not is really a good point. Yeah. Yes, sir. What else? Yes, sir.
Given the cost associated with LMS, bringing it to your campus and all the integration, so much participation has to come in with people wearing their fiscal goggles, for lack of a better term, because it's so far-reaching and it hits so many aspects of what a university or college's expectations for technology delivery are at this time. I know in my Portland State situation, I saw it evolve and change, because LMSs were changing left and right 10 years ago, and we were going left and right. And it wasn't until we started getting the right people at the table with the authority, the protocol, and people who have the availability to participate and are willing to participate that our flat road didn't get created.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it might take some time to evolve such a group like this. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to ask this question. It was on a previous slide. Could you have too many cooks in the kitchen? Yeah. At a certain point, the committee is just going to break down, right? People can't make any kind of decision. So getting the right people in the room is going to be kind of tricky. Absolutely. You could have, I have had very passionate faculty come to me and say, I need to be on this committee because I'm very passionate about this one key point. And I would have to say, yes, absolutely, your voice is important. You may want to bring that up with your Faculty Senate representative, who then gets a voice or who gets a vote at this committee. Anyone is welcome to come to this committee. So there's a good question right there in terms of formation. Would you allow anybody in the room? We do. We allow anybody in the room. Who gets a vote? Just the people that we've designated. You may find that you have kind of toxic personalities sometimes, right? People that are just very negative naysayers. You might say, oh, maybe we don't want those people to come back, kind of thing. So that's difficult. I would definitely say that if you're thinking about trying to build some kind of LMS committee, that before you say we're doing this, I would go around very strategically and talk to people. Hey, Colin, we're thinking about forming this committee, and we're going to talk about these kind of issues. You think that's a good idea? And you say, yeah, I think that's a good idea. No, I hate that idea. Okay, and so you get enough consensus after a while. If there's enough people from that stakeholder group who think this is a good idea, then I would move forward. But I wouldn't proceed if you found that everybody hated the idea, right? Otherwise, again, it's kind of a top-down decision. We're deciding there's going to be this committee and you're going to be on it. Instead, you kind of be very strategic. Go around, talk to people, say, hey, what do you think? Most of the time, if you ask people their decision, they're going to say, hey, I've got a voice finally. wonderful. It's not just the IT guys doing this to me. I'm part of this. But I would start by talking to people and communicating as much as possible. Find out if there's an issue. In that process, you can identify your political landmines in advance before you even start down that road. And then lastly, once you get some people together and you say there's a core of champions, stakeholders in the room, you might say, let's consider a charter. So here's an example of our charter. This has gone through multiple drafts, but you can feel free to take our draft and see if you can compare it with yours at your institution, or see if there's something that might work better for you. But it's a good, just one start. And it does start to answer some of those kind of questions that I think that you would want to ask before you get started on that process of developing a collaborative learning management system governing body. So you can see we give a little bit of background as to what this is about. We are stating that it is a recommending committee, not an end-all kind of decision-making committee. We have a charge, we have a scope, what it is we do and what it is we don't do. We also had to define at what point, what do we mean by a learning management system? Because nowadays you've got people saying that the human resources hiring system is a learning management system, right? There's all kinds of things they call a learning management system. So we had to make sure and define what we meant before we could go too far. Talk about what is the scope, what we're doing, what are possible issues to consider, who are some key stakeholders, and the proposed meeting frequency. So yeah, we went ahead and tried to answer those, but we did this in collaboration with all of our key stakeholders in advance, and that's how we came up with this. So this is an example of one. Here is the LMS committee with, from UNLV. They had one too. This is kind of the basis of where I, again, went from one institution that already had this in place to one that just needed to start one, and this is where we are today. So that sort of concludes this presentation today, and I just wondered if there were any questions at this point or observations. Anybody would like to share? Yes, sir.
So, at least in your experience, how are you guys disseminating information that gets decided in an advisory committee out to faculty at large? So was that external communication link, or is it basically we're waiting for people to come to us and we can say, oh, well, we talked about this here, so this is kind of our backup?
Yeah, that's a good question. Two ways, possibly three ways, and it depends on the scope of the decision. Right? So if it's a really a huge scope that's going to affect everyone, we'll probably do an email blast. We'll blast out to everybody, say, this is a decision we're considering. Your voice is important. We're doing this right now with our lecture capture system. We have to go from one lecture capture system to another. We could potentially just choose one. Bad idea. Instead, we're going to say, here's a survey. Let's find out what your priorities are. Everybody can participate in the survey. Next, we're going to have some group sessions to get together and talk. Those people that are really passionate about it, let's hear what you have to say. Then let you be involved in making the decision about the choice. So those kind of questions, certainly we would give them out to everybody either through an email blast, or we also have the ability to put an announcement into Canvas itself. So anybody that's touching Canvas, if they log in, they have to see that announcement, right? So it's a very easy way to do it. If it's just something that is behind the scenes, FERPA type questions or privacy type questions, we could potentially just get the key stakeholders together in the same room and make some decision. Faculty probably could care less about some of those decisions, so try to go that way. Any other questions? Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming today. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions for me later on, please feel free to contact me. Thanks. Thank you.